Hello, Professor.
Hello, it's a pleasure to meet you. Good evening.
The pleasure is mine as well. I am truly happy and we are going to have this conversation. I have admired you for quite some time, but I must confess that during the pandemic, you have become a constant companion. I joke with my friends that while they are binge watching shows, I am doing something good. It's been really wonderful. Well, I wanted to share something with my community and talk a bit about why I invited you to this live session. I do work here. I deal with people who are very special to me, people who are facing a great challenge in life, which is illness, and many of my colleagues who are here on Instagram. They have a condition that is an incurable disease. So, these are people who benefit from palliative care. So, these are people who have no time to lose and who are searching for meaning, for an understanding of their suffering, trying to find answers or the right questions, or the answers that, in some way, bring meaning. And I think that, since you have touched my heart so deeply with so many things you've said in the lectures I've watched on YouTube, I really wanted to share this with these people, with those I live alongside and who make such a difference in my life and in my own growth. So, I think my first question would be this: is illness a way for us to awaken to a life that has meaning?
Look, certainly all trials are ways for us to awaken our consciousness to a higher level. We often think it's bad to go through trials, but we don't see it that way when we make our child at school take a math test. We know that this will help them grow, that it will prepare them for life. Consciousness is born from contrast. If we look at the great thinkers throughout history, especially in the classical period, they spoke of something I fully believe in. It's not even a matter of belief. Philosophy is not a system of beliefs, but something I verify in my own life. That is why I believe it is something endowed with deep meaning for us, that we have come into this world for nothing other than to evolve our consciousness to ever more human levels, ever closer to the divine. And for this to happen, it is necessary that from time to time, life gives us a shake so that our consciousness may awaken. Thus, consciousness is born from contrast, the contrast between an ordinary life and the demand to respond to diversity. When we step out of this ordinary life, we begin to develop new potentials. We start to refine our tools. And this is universal. We can observe it in a very simple way. Between two sounds, consciousness becomes aware of both. If only a single note played all the time, we would not become conscious of it. Various colors combine, and we become aware of them. If there were only one color, we would not notice it. If the universe had only one, consciousness would not arise. Consciousness is born from contrast, and each challenge is that contrast with a life that has become trivial, alienated, and scattered, an invitation to ascend to the next level. I often use the staircase as a great example of evolution, right? We remain on a certain level because we are very prone to comfort, and then life places a wall in front of us. Either we keep bumping into it endlessly until our actions awaken us, or we look upward and find the way out to another level. Therefore, all difficulties, not just illness, are levels that require consciousness to rise to another step. If we consider that what is good is that which makes us grow as human beings, do you realize that we would have to rename everything in life? Because we tend to equate good with what is pleasant. And sometimes what is pleasant is what most entraps us in our vices, what most buries us in comfort. What is good is that which makes us grow. And if we believe in this, we have to rename our entire lives.
I think I heard you mention in the voice of the silence, in the study about the voice of the silence, that for some people, pain might be the only opportunity for growth. I found that a very interesting idea to reflect on, don't you think?
Stoic philosophy, for example, had a concept that was later revisited by Nietzsche, which was as follows: amor fati, the love of fate, the love of destiny. I used to say, you shouldn't just accept the things that life presents to us, but you should love them, knowing that within them lies the best opportunity you have to grow. That's quite interesting, isn't it? Because nowadays we operate with the mindset that the universe is entirely chaotic and that things fall upon us by mere chance. We fail to realize that nature obeys cycles, that nature is entirely woven together in an incredibly intelligent way, yet we ignore the intelligence of the cosmos around us. And we think that the only intelligent beings here are ourselves. Therefore, we believe that the things that happen to us simply fall into our laps by chance. As a great mathematician from Bancar once said, chance is nothing more than the measure of our ignorance. Therefore, the things that affect us do so to rescue us from wasting our own lives, to pull us out of a comfort zone that eventually becomes unhealthy. The world needs to grow. You need to grow. Each of us must fulfill our own journey. And for that, it is necessary to set ourselves on the path. Our complacency makes us unwilling to face challenges. Someone who never faces challenges, I believe, honestly, that nature has given up on them. It no longer considers them worth the effort. I believe that nature has given up on that person. Therefore, the challenges that come into our lives honor us, for they show that we are capable of overcoming them, not only for ourselves as we emerge greater on the other side, but also for those who come after us. We become a point of reference for them. I imagine that with every challenge we overcome, everyone who comes after us will suffer less because of the example we set. In this way, everything finds its justification, doesn't it? That is, this idea of amor fati, the Stoic acceptance of fate, is not just about loving fate itself, but about loving the intelligence of nature and understanding that it gives us what is best for our growth. It is not arbitrary. It is neither punishment nor reward. It is necessity. It is the law of necessity.
Within the context of cancer, we face some very unique challenges because it is different from other diseases. With cancer, we are always dealing with the question of winning or losing. So, when you face the disease and complete your treatment, you are treated as society celebrates you. Naturally, after all, you have overcome a significant challenge in your life. And when you become ill again, as is my case, I have been undergoing treatment nonstop for 9 years, and the case of so many people in palliative care, or those who pass away, it is the spoiler of life, my friends. I don't know if I am telling you something new, but it will happen. It has nothing to do with having cancer or not. It has to do with being alive. Dying is part of life, and so I have always had this desire to ask a philosopher, what is this issue of always treating everything as winning or losing regarding our culture, regarding our society?
Yes, in fact, we live in a society that is highly competitive. It lives by winning and losing, and it's not even about overcoming oneself. It's about defeating the other. It's a great race. And then suddenly, death or illness becomes an adversary, and we start to compete with it, even though they are simply agents of nature. They do what corresponds to them within the order of nature, which is beyond our control. But once the Stoics said that there are things that depend on us and things that do not depend on us. And what are the things that do not depend on us? Whether it rains or shines, whether we fall ill or not, whether life is short or long, these do not depend on us. Now, what does depend on us? the response we give to these things. This is quite interesting because they said, never concern yourself with things that do not depend on you. You should, indeed, feel sadness. But is it truly what depends on you, the response you give to these circumstances? Your answer was quite formal. So, what depends on us is not to compete with nature or with our own bodies, which are biological entities over which we do not have complete control. What depends on us is to maintain our mental balance, to cultivate our feelings, and to ensure that our actions are as humane as possible. What we must overcome is something else, a conflict between duration and intensity. This, I believe, is a tremendous issue in our current times, and our culture has definitely chosen duration. For example, when you say that someone knows a lot, you are referring to the number of books they have read, not to the quality of life that those books have instilled in them. In other words, the intensity to be able to respond to the situations in one's life, the intensity to be able to remain in control of oneself, no matter the circumstances. So, I see society that often celebrates intellectuals who, when faced with the first adversity, fall apart. You may already know a great deal in the intellectual realm, but intensity is not among those things. You notice that sometimes great men in history, this is quite common, lived very short lives. Great masters, even Jesus Christ himself and others from different traditions, lived very short lives. Can you really say they lived little? In truth, I believe they lived immensely within a chronologically brief stage. Life is much more about intensity than duration. Sometimes a person may have an extremely long life, but one that is extremely selfish and turned inward. I would not say that this person truly lived much. Those who left us grand examples of life, these are the ones who truly lived, no matter how much time they had. And sometimes, from the perspective of length, it is very little. We toast to longevity, but we forget about depth. There are many people who have read 1,000 books, but few who truly live one, two, or three good books, books that contain some wisdom, and yet everyone thinks the rule is the former, always stretching, never diving in, never going deeper. This gives rise to an entire culture that is highly alienating, somewhat mad, in which we are immersed. And that is the worst part. We embrace this, we believe in it.
It's curious because imagine I am 37 years old, and for the past 9 years, I have been living with this awareness that perhaps I do not have all the time we think we would like to have. I never really know how much time it is that we think we are supposed to have. But I have always thought that a short life lived fully is worth more than a long life where we are just dragging our chains. I have accompanied some end-of-life processes with patients, and recently I was with a 16-year-old girl during her final day, in the last hours of her life. And she spoke to me of an intensity, of a love, of a devotion, even of an ethic. And then I looked at her and thought, we are capable of living eternities in 16 years. We are capable of living with devotion in 16 years. A 16-year-old girl has so much more to teach because she is much more connected to her own essence than we are at 80, standing atop the castle, gazing at our own navels, never having managed to give love to another person. So truly, what you say to me touches me deeply, you know? It is a matter of longevity. I think it's an issue that I experience all the time with people, with parents, with those I interact with. Anyway, I even wanted to mention, there's a phrase I heard from you that really stuck in my mind. Why would society build a bridge if it doesn't want to reach the other side, especially when we're talking about something related to death? And it's quite fascinating because people have this thing about aging. They want it. They desire longevity. They want to live a long time, but at the same time, they don't want to die. So, I keep noticing that it doesn't really make much sense, does it? And as you even say, it seems as if people think they're walking toward an abyss. At the same time that they want to grow old, they also don't want to. At the same time that they want a long life, they believe that a long life means never dying. So, they don't want to talk about things that are obvious. So, I would even like you to speak about this question of why we build a bridge if we don't want to reach the other side. And I truly think that's a statement that, in fact, is quite.
Yes, this is very curious because we are so identified with a physical vehicle that we think losing it means losing everything. We don't have much time to reflect on more. Since adolescence, I've been stubborn, calling myself Michelle. I don't know how to address you. Is it Anna or Michelle? Do you prefer?
You may call me anything you like, and I will find it wonderful. But you can call me Anna.
Since I was a girl, sometimes I would find myself thinking during my adolescence. I saw someone have an accident, lose a leg, lose an arm, but they were okay. Someone who suffered a more severe accident became quadriplegic, but they are still well. What is this self? Sometimes I think that people imagine the self as a heart connected to a brain. I imagine that those science fiction movies say that maybe one day it will be true, that perhaps a mechanical heart will be created. Then the self will become even more induced. It will be just a brain connected to a contraption. Is the brain the self? Honestly, I don't believe that. I see the brain as if it were a radio device. It is not the waves, it simply decodes them. And we run away from this idea of a true identity. In fact, because this is not demanded by the world today. What is demanded by culture is that you are always turned outward, concerned with projecting and providing the greatest possible comfort for this little robot of flesh and bone that is your body, and that you live as if you were going to be eternal without believing in eternity. As you mentioned, I also use another example that I find interesting. A light at the end of the tunnel only serves those who wish to leave the tunnel. For those who want to leave, people who bravely face this journey of life, which is death at the end of life, another stage in the process of the great life, which the Indians call Jivatma, or more specifically Devaprana, to be more precise and correct. And the people who face this courageously and leave a lesson, we will not look at it. Let us pretend it does not exist. Let us pretend it will not happen. Kalyanga used to say that when we turn our backs on difficulties, they do not cease to exist. They catch us from behind. And then comes that situation which you probably know even better than I do, which Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross also describes, right? They come face to face with the death of civic consciousness because they are unable to confront a phenomenon that takes away from them everything that had held specific importance until then. You focused only on a set of things, a set of status, a set of possessions, of comfort, and inevitably you will lose all of that. And you did not focus on anything at all that cannot be taken away from you. It is with this awareness that you find yourself without a foundation and you flee. And you spend your whole life running away. Honestly, let me tell you something that perhaps you may not understand. Well, I know you are capable of understanding, and I hope all our listeners are as well, which is I believe that if all of humanity thought it would die tomorrow, we would become a better place to live. This gives a definitive touch to everything we say, to everything we do. Marcus Aurelius spoke about this. Embrace death as you can. The world would be much more humanistic. We would think about what is essential. And life would be like a teacher who says, you did your homework properly. I'll give you one more day. That's how it is. We must value our day in order to deserve the next one. I believe the world would be a better place to live. Certainly. And I have already spoken about this. To accept death as one can, it is always an excellent concept.
It's really about this. You reach the end of life, and that's when you feel urgency. The urgency to resolve everything you left behind, the loose ends you didn't tie up. So I do see, yes, some processes of awakening, and perhaps my discomfort, and maybe that's why I expose myself and talk about this question of finitude. At first, I think there was a sense of strangeness. Why would a young woman, and so on, want to talk about death, want to talk about finitude? So no, I am talking about this to try to awaken people to the fact that, perhaps, they don't need to become ill. They don't need to reach their end to reflect on other matters. So I received this invitation. I received this invitation by opening a piece of paper, and it told me, look, you have no cure, run, or stay still, but make a decision. And this happens every day. So if we really, all of us, I love when people do this exercise. If you think that, if you open this paper today and it tells you that you only have until tomorrow, what are you going to do? Is it really all those things you're holding on to? Is it really all these problems that you're turning into the biggest problem in the world? Is it all this pride, this fear of expressing your feelings? Will holding on to that really remain the most important thing? So I assure you that in your final moments, everything becomes very clear. But I believe life is much more meaningful when you transform that clarity into time to actually enjoy it. And you truly make a much deeper contribution, not only to humanity in a broad sense, but also right here, to your family, to the people who are close to you. And so, it occurs to me that I should ask how philosophy views legacy, because I think there is also a very distorted perspective where people treat legacy as the things they possess, the things they leave behind. Is that really a legacy, Professor?
I often say that a person is not great because of what they have, but because of what they give. If a person needs to possess things in order to be great, then it is the things that are great, not the person. A person is great because of what they give. When we live out a metaphor of our own life, which is what you are experiencing, and in truth, it is this letter you received, the same letter we all receive when we are born. Then I cannot say by any means who will finish this journey first, whether it will be you or someone else. Sometimes it is very meaningful for us to look at the whole, to look at the other. We see what we are living through. In January of this year, everyone thought, here comes another year, just like any other. Many of those who thought that way are no longer here, over 1 billion of them. So it is interesting for us to imagine that we live for a long time, and therefore there is plenty of time to waste, and not to think about this question of legacy, whether or not you have received that letter you mentioned. Sometimes I see an author whose birth year is uncertain or unclear. He might have been born in year X, or perhaps as much as 80 years later, or even possibly 100 years after that. Alte, break time, no lima es, gigahin. That is a rather small margin of error. Consider that he lived somewhere between the year 100 and the year 20. How so? The year 100 and the year 20 before Christ. That's 80 years, and it's a small margin of error. With 80 years and another 80 years, none of us will still be here. None of us. In other words, this reality that time flows and that it is here to give depth is what gives meaning to all our moments. It is about diving into the mystery that is the human being and leaving a reference point so that people can better understand life through this example of living, not to leave here smaller, but to leave greater than when we arrived. Legacy is adding value to the world. Legacy is what I was just talking about a moment ago. Those who pass through here will suffer less than I did because of me. The first value to the world makes us human and sets us apart from nature. I mention this often. Nature expects photosynthesis from plants, survival from animals, but from humans, it expects us to add value to the world. Well, how much time does one need for this? Or this? Perhaps just a single minute. Maybe just a minute. But a minute lived as a human being, with depth, with body and soul united and fully aware of what one came here to do. A spirit of mission, eager to deliver its message to the world. Sometimes it's just a minute. I find it remarkable that at times, when we pause to reflect on what we've done so far, we find that only a very few minutes truly hold value. There was once an experiment conducted at an American university where they gathered young people like you between 30 and 40 years old and asked them to recount everything, absolutely everything they could remember from their lives. In other words, memory preserves what was significant, what left a mark in some way. Do you know the average amount of time it took them to recount everything stored in their memories? 4 to 6 hours. The rest had fallen into the black hole of unconsciousness, of mechanical living. Can you really say that these people who lived for 40 years truly lived a lot? They truly lived those 4 hours, the moments that made a difference, that brought value, that were meaningful to them. Therefore, this question of divine time, of when we are truly alive, of when we are immersed in routine, is something that would require deep philosophical discussion, perhaps 3 times over. Well, right now, you are bringing tremendous value. You're contributing in this very moment. Rest assured, some people have lived 100 years and perhaps contributed nothing. This is the human drama. To die without ever truly being born as your brother, without being born to life, without delivering your message, without leaving your mark on the world. That is legacy. Everything else is fantasy.
I recently witnessed this. I wanted to ask about legacy because I accompanied a patient, and in the final moments of her life, she wanted to build a legacy. And her legacy was to provide the best possible education for her children, in the sense of saying, look, this is what I can leave for you. This care, this lovingness, is for you to become people who care about others. And her adolescent children were struggling greatly to cope with their mother's illness, with the loss of their mother. And so, I find it interesting, because I was watching videos and studying this question, what is legacy? I was asking myself this question, and suddenly I witnessed a practical lesson, a mother giving the best legacy she could to her child, which is to try to help them become better adults through the care they were showing her. So, I think that's it. In the end, what truly matters is what we give back as humanity.
Yes, there is a saying from Buddhist wisdom that goes, more than 1,000 meaningless words, a single word that brings comfort to someone is worth much more. If you have benefited a human being, help that person to become more humane, to face life's challenges with greater dignity, to emerge stronger on the other side, then life has already been worthwhile. It has already counted. It's incredible how, at this very moment, there are millions, billions, in fact, of people on Earth who will go through life without ever receiving this message.
A mystery to themselves.
Exactly. They will go through life without ever receiving this, without ever receiving this word that adds value to who they are today, remaining unaware of their own word, which is their deepest identity. Well, life gives us a shakeup. Sometimes we discover our word and we speak it out, but it took a strong shake to get there. It was worth it for what it gave me. It mattered, it made a difference. I would never like to imagine, if we allow ourselves to imagine with respect, what we might think after crossing the threshold from life to death. I would never want to picture myself looking back and realizing no one grew even a millimeter thanks to my existence. I think that would be the worst summary of a life I could ever imagine. And is there not enough time for whom? For me to do this? There is time for all of us to do this. I have dedicated myself even more to being present in body and soul in the present moment, to imagine what the future may or may not bring. In truth, as is said in theological circles, the future belongs to God. No one knows how much time we still have, but we do know how much depth we can have now in its fullness.
You even mentioned God, and I didn't want to bring God into our conversation because I think it's a very big conflict for those who are ill. I always end up bringing it back to this condition, which is the condition I live in, the condition of my work, of the people who are close to me. There is also, in a way, even a certain cruelty, because when we fall ill, when we are in our fragility, at the height of our vulnerability, all that people can offer us is a punishing God. Punishment is guilt. What did you do wrong to deserve this? Have more faith, and then faith is turned into something very trivial, this bargaining, like, look to God. I give you this here, if you give me that healing I've always asked for, and in saying this, it's as if God is laughing in your face, because it seems like he needs that candle you're offering, my friend. So, there is always this difficult and unpleasant issue with God. Instead of presenting us with this God who is everything, the whole, the absolute, where? How can philosophy bring us the relief of freeing ourselves from this God who possesses so many traits of average humans, vengeful, proud?
We've taken the opposite of the biblical precept. God made man in his image and likeness, but now man makes God in his own image and likeness. It is the image and likeness of what man is that is being projected onto God. We live obsessed with one thing, Michelle. All our actions are fundamentally driven by fear and desire all the time. We get out of bed in the morning either because of the enticing aroma of breakfast coming from the kitchen or out of fear that our boss will get angry with us. We are moved by animal consciousness, which is that horizontal line. It's like how animals are made to move in the circus. Fortunately, that is coming to an end now, isn't it? It's either the whip or the sardine, or in the laboratory, the mouse gets either cheese or an electric shock. We live our lives moved by fear and desire, never by duty, never by principles, very rarely by principles. And then we begin to have a truly vertical life. That is the cross of the world, isn't it? You have a horizontal line, which is fear and desire, and this vertical one, which is guided by principles, by duty. As we are enslaved by this fear and desire, which are the axis of animal consciousness, we project our limitations onto the entire universe. We believe the whole universe also moves according to fear and desire, and that those who wish to dominate either intimidate or make promises. We are used to being bribed, and this idea of fear and desire is nothing more than a form of bribery. Come here, and I'll give you something. Look, if you don't come here, I'll hit you. So we think that all beings in the universe behave this way as well. There is a Sufi master, Rabi'a of Basra, Rabi'a al-Adawiya. You've probably heard me mention her in my lectures. She has a prayer that I am always quoting because I find it wonderful. She used to say, "My Lord, my God, if I seek you out of desire for your heaven, cast me out of your heaven. If I seek you out of fear of your hell, burn me in your hell. If I seek you only for what you are, receive me into the embrace of your glory." In other words, as I was just telling you a moment ago, We don't make our child take a test because we want to punish them, but because we want them to grow. Can you imagine? Would the intentions of a great father be any different? But since we are eternally manipulating and being manipulated, we imagine that this is the only possibility in the universe. And furthermore, since we are addicted to inertia, to the law of least effort, we think that everything that makes us move is a punishment. I did something wrong, I am being punished. No. Someone believes that you can be better than you are, that you can rise to the stature of humanity. Did someone not consider you worthy of a challenge of this magnitude? Did they think you could do something to improve the path for those who come after? The challenges are always matched to the measure of humanity. Imagine that I throw a ball at you. I threw it too high. It doesn't reach you. It doesn't hit you. If it hit you, it's because it was meant for you. That's how problems are. Problems reach us because they are matched to our measure. In fact, ancient authors from Unicer itself say that great problems honor me by considering that I have the answer for them. And if they reached me, it's because they believe in me as someone capable of finding answers. The great General Unicer. In other words, many others say similar things. Now, our complacency tends to see this as a punishment. And I can tell you that the worst hell that exists is neither life nor death. It is to live in terror, haunted by fear and desire, always anxious, waiting for something that is not here. And when you finally reach it, you realize it still wasn't what you were looking for, which is very frustrating, or living in fear of everything and everyone. All new things come to break my complacency, my status quo. You are not a slave. I repeat, think of a great slave, a great historical philosopher who is truly a slave, even from a cruel perspective. Epaphroditus, who is Nero's secretary, used to say that a slave is someone who, in what is his responsibility, does nothing. So, regarding what is not his responsibility, he keeps meddling and getting involved in things that are not his concern. But when it comes to what is actually his responsibility, he does nothing. He rebels against what does not pertain to him. Let me give a practical example to make this clear. I have to go to school. And the school, which in Brasilia is located in a place where you have to cross a bridge that always has a roundabout traffic jam. It's a new school, and I keep arguing in the middle of the traffic jam, complaining about the administration of Brasilia, about the Department of Transportation and Public Works, and so on and so forth. But none of that changes anything. Now, when it comes to what is actually my responsibility, I do nothing. I wanted to leave half an hour earlier. So we are eternally in this situation. There are things that do not depend on us. The number of years we will live does not depend on us, but the dignity with which we will live depends entirely on us. He used to say, "This is a slave." He keeps cursing what does not depend on him. And when it comes to what does depend on him, he does nothing, like an animal. So ours is a society that is very afraid of being forced to grow. Therefore, it considers challenges as punishment. Why? Because happiness is the path of least effort. Happiness is staying quietly in that place where no one bothers you. I find it quite shameful that we send our children to school to take tests. And when we know that life has its own tests, we skip class. Isn't that so? What right do we have to send our children to school? You shouldn't send me because we are terrible when it comes to facing life's tests. We claim that we will grow alongside them. And if we can know in advance, we avoid everything because of this idea. We love a mediocre life that demands nothing from us. And then we treat every change as punishment and even make it headline news. And then comes what you mentioned just to conclude the thought. I know I am going on a bit. Athens used to say, it was a polytheistic culture. He said that what most offends the gods is not disbelief in them. It is believing and thinking that we can buy them off. In other words, this being or these beings, according to what each person believes, want nothing but your growth. Now, the story of the candle that you mentioned, the candle itself is very meaningful when it serves as a metaphor, when it is a symbol, when it represents yourself. Here in Brasilia, I notice that when you get a candle, it has to be beautiful. We feel sorry to light it. We don't light it. Brasilia is very dry. That thing turns to dust. It dissolves. It dies without ever having been born as a candle. That is the record. It becomes a paperweight. A candle is something that was born to give light, but when it gives light, it gradually melts away. But it would die anyway as a paperweight without ever having been born as a candle. Human beings are very much like candles. When they give light, they gradually melt away, but they die as human beings. Otherwise, what would human beings be if they do not give light? Not even to become a paperweight, because it cannot stop the breaks. The candle has an advantage over it, but we also came to give light. Perhaps we
have come to be at the service of this greater intelligence that unites the one. After all, we are part of the same.
And it is light because it is a constant metaphor in all the traditions we have seen. Here, to move from ignorance to wisdom, and wisdom, the symbol of wisdom, is light. Therefore, the great holder of this wisdom, for those who believe in him, and I do, is the great light. And when we cast light around us, we are truly fulfilling this role, this image, this resemblance to the Father.
There is a subject I really enjoy, which is talking about healing. After all, I wrote an entire book trying to philosophize about healing. I believe that the idea of a cure for cancer has come to occupy the place of a guarantee that does not exist. And I see that many patients waste a lot of time sitting and waiting for that piece of paper that says cured before they start to live. And I find healing to be something deeply philosophical, because I cannot believe that a healthy person, whose life is completely immersed in numbness, is more healed than someone who is ill but awake, striving to surrender themselves. How do you understand healing?
Remember the biblical phrase, by your works you shall be known. What legacy are you leaving in the world? Well, you are imprinting values onto the world. You are giving encouragement to those around you. You are offering hope. You are living intensely. By your works, I know you. I see many people who are considered absolutely healed or healthy. You look at their legacy, and they haven't even left a trace. There is nothing. You can't even say that a human being passed through there. You look at people, regardless of the condition of their bodies, and you see that in what depends on them, they are doing things in the best way possible. And when you look, there is a human trace, a sign that those who come after depend on the path you leave behind, on living life in the way you would expect from a human being. And this is the testimony that here there is someone alive, someone who leaves a mark in every moment. I find this aspect of healing very interesting. The etymology of the word cura relates to care, as you probably know from the Latin cura. That's why there's the word incuria, which refers to someone who has neglected something and can even be held accountable for it. In other words, care is required in what depends on us. And when it comes to healing the body, what we can do is somewhat limited. So we do what we can for our bodies. But for a specific illness, there is an entire field of medical science, and it is from there that the solution must come. But the healing of my thoughts, the healing of my feelings, the healing of my actions, these are entirely within my power. And in what is my responsibility, I am doing nothing. To know that we can change the world on a small stage, yet do nothing on a vast stage. Life is always a limited stage. Within this stage, we must know how to give our very best performance. When I teach study techniques to my students, I always say, look, do you know the story of Snow White? Of course, everyone knows it. Tell it to me in 30 seconds. That's when the person hesitates. Once upon a time, stop. In 30 seconds, there's no room for once upon a time. Queen orders stepdaughter killed hunter is afraid. Dwarf shelter her. Queen poisons. Prince kisses. Happily ever after. Do you realize that the essential content of the story takes just 20 seconds? But if you give me 3 hours, I'll talk about the marble, the carriage, the staircase, the queen. That's not essential. It's just embellishment. In 30 seconds, I deliver my message. In other words, the size of the stage will never be our decision. But whatever stage I am given, I will deliver my message, put on my show to the fullest of my abilities. It is precisely within the limitations of the stage that we begin to refine our tools. If you had infinite time, who would be attentive, who would be disciplined, who would worry about being productive, about fraternity, about not leaving things for later, not postponing them to an infinite future? When the stage is limited, we realize, oh, now I have to start sharpening my tools and get to work. I am very fond of an author.
The stage is limited, everyone, for all of us, so let's begin our work.
There is an author you should know, whom I greatly admire, Amir Klink, who crossed the ocean in his little boat. I find it very beautiful when he says that he is grateful to his father precisely for having set boundaries that he could work within. Within those boundaries, he learned to do his very best. Within the confines of a small boat in the middle of the ocean, he managed to overcome the most adverse situations in the world and reach the other side. And within these boundaries, you learn that you came equipped with a toolbox and begin to learn how to use it. Without boundaries, there is no growth. All of us are on a limited stage. Therefore, open your toolbox and use it to its fullest. In other words, healing and care. Take care of what depends on you and make the most of your tools, for we are all in the same boat. It may not be a mere Klink's little boat, but perhaps it's something even smaller. We are all in a limited boat, and within this, if we do not use our tools well, we lose the journey. That is to say, everything becomes chaotic.
And sometimes we even sink.
Absolutely. And it sinks with a perfectly healthy body. There are people who sink logically and mentally, even when the body is completely healthy, and yet here we are in this scenario. It's important to pay attention to these details.
I think there are a lot of healthcare professionals here. I would even like to say something to them as well, because I tend to be quite demanding with them. I believe I can use this space, as a patient who speaks out, to try to move medicine away from such a purely technological focus. I often say that perhaps the greatest progress would be for us to take a step back and return to caring for people, not just treating diseases. So, considering that there are many people online from the healthcare field, I think it's a great opportunity for you to truly care for a person, to care for the vulnerability of a person. And I believe that these people are giving professionals the opportunity to grow as human beings. So, it is an incredible exchange. I think that this act of caring is also a way to transcend. What do you understand about this work of medicine, of the human being, of the person who is ill? It is a beautiful way to help each other grow. We need to stop looking only at this overly technical aspect that medicine has become.
This moment has been a time of great growth for me. You realize that when faced with a situation like this, there are no ready-made phrases, no formulas, because these are people experiencing a real situation who need something concrete, something well-founded, something with roots. There is no room for any kind of escape, no room for evasion. It is with complete honesty that I bring forth the best I have to offer. Is this of great value? It is of great value to be confronted with situations like these, with people who possess such protagonism, such a desire to show others that the true drama of life is not death. The real drama of life is alienation. It is selfishness. It is ignoring others. This is another thing I find remarkable in our times. Once I passed by someone in the morning and greeted them with good morning. I had such a special feeling, Michelle, that one day in the future, people will be called troglodytes for having ignored a fellow human being who passed by us. Because a human being is far too significant to be ignored. It is simply too much. A human being holds potential, possesses dignity, and offers us an extraordinary opportunity for growth. Now, once again, we are speaking about the cultural context in which we are immersed, and it is important for us to understand this, even so that we do not reject those who act differently. Because many times they are simply products of their environment, and we must also seek to understand them. We are living in a time where the product of life is not the human being, but things. At the end of the process, it is things that you seek to obtain, and not the development of human beings, not the building of oneself. In any company, any enterprise, the human being is treated as a means. Immanuel Kant, a great philosopher, said the most moral thing is to treat humans as ends in themselves, not just as means. We must not become alienated, because the key question is that we are here for others. We become alienated and do not think that if you are good, people only become alienated from those who are ill. No, they also become alienated from the healthy, the elderly, and the young. In daily life, I found it amusing because I walked into a clothing store and people looked at me sideways. They didn't even help me since the clothes weren't for my age or size. So they disregarded me as a customer. I remembered when I was a teenager, young people also disregarded me because they would look at me in a t-shirt and think, I don't have money to buy. In other words, they disregard youth, they disregard the elderly, they disregard the sick, and they even disregard the healthy. A person becomes merely a tool for production. He is just an instrument within a production process. That is, he has ceased to be the purpose of the process in all his multiple social roles. This is a great alienation. If man is not the end of the process, then what will be the end of the process? All the fantastic moments in a person's life are a spectacle to sit and witness. A child, when born, when learning to master their own body, the suffering of someone who loses something or someone, at every moment of human life, when inserted within the normal human process, these are beautiful to witness and to take part in. What is not beautiful is when the human being is involved in processes that are not their own. When a person becomes corrupted, when they become unworthy of their own life, these are various processes that are not beautiful to witness. And this happens often because we stop making the construction of ourselves one of the great cornerstones of the process.
Well, everyone, sometimes people question so much about the meaning of life. I think for me, there is something that has become increasingly clear, and may God help me. Every morning I think about what I can do today to become a better person. And I believe this is the best question everyone should ask themselves, and truly try to be available to the whole, so that we can get ever closer to our true essence, because our essence desires this. It wants to arrive, it wants to love, it wants to grow, it wants to evolve. It's us who end up, I think, right? I think we are the ones who end up limiting ourselves and getting lost in our own conflicts here, in the things we put ahead as priorities. And you mentioned the other day that it's no use having a plan for your day if sometimes you don't have any plan for your life. And then I kept thinking about that phrase, because at Casa Palliativa, which is the project we have with the patients, we have a mantra, one hope per day. So, for us, it's so we don't stay still, sitting, just waiting for that happiness we've idealized. It will only be good if that happens. It will only be good if I have the guarantee of that. It will only be good if my test results 3 months from now are perfect. Then, when the 3-month test comes, the person opens it, the results are good, and in the very next second, they already think, oh, but that's just for now, right? Who knows what will happen in 3 months? So it's almost a constant unhappiness, isn't it? In search of a happiness that, suddenly, is available in the form of a small hope each day. And then, as you say, it's important to have a plan, because otherwise you can't even make a plan for your day. How do I fit this into our profound impermanence, where it's so difficult for us to make a plan? And truly, at least for a patient, the cycles are so complex and even painful.
There is a quote from Cicero that I like very much, my dear, and it affirms that this is an additive factor for the lives of those with whom we share our journey. And I believe that life is like this. It is an adjustment every day at night, reflecting on my day. Was I an additive factor, not just a source of hope, but also a small act of generosity each day? When there are many people who are suffering, just the fact that today you managed to offer a smile, even while experiencing the same suffering as they are, means you have already done something meaningful. I have often encouraged this during quarantine, that every day we strengthen our generosity so that we may rest at the end of the day with the peace of the just, in harmony with ourselves and the world. Today, I left a trace of humanity in the minds of others. For those who follow my path, it is to remind us why we are meant to be human. To me, living the dream of the just is a wonder, because in the end, at the close of life, it is truly the great dream of the just. Every day, we have this reckoning with ourselves. Today, I was a force for addition. I sleep in peace, I deserve the dream of the just, and I embody nothing more than the great dream of the just. The philosopher, as he used to say, was once asked, "Do you fear death?" He replied, "I do not fear it, for I am intimate with it. Every day I will to some things and am born into others. Therefore I live with it, I walk with it every day. It is what tells me what must die and what must be reborn each day." If we truly cultivated the habit of growing throughout life, we would be intimate with the idea of death, intimate with the idea of the dream of the just. We are not people who live in fear. We are people who find satisfaction in our own being, who feel we deserve this pillow, to have a fulfilling day, and to sense that this cycle of rest is welcome. And I deserved it because my day was the day of a human being. So this idea of adding value to the world is fundamental. In fact, I don't really believe in those ideas where we imagine that a great person suddenly arrived one day and did something grandiose. I believe that truly great people are those who did small things every single day over the course of the time that was given to them. And for many, it was very little. Over the time they had, they did small things every day. And I believe that a single day can justify a whole life if it is lived in a truly human way. So, this habit of embracing the dream of the just, in part with the heavens and the earth, and a dream is always a mysterious process for us. It is not simply what happens when we sleep. It is a mystery both in the myth of Hypnos and Thanatos, who were brothers and walked hand in hand. The dream is always a mystery. What happens to the body, to our consciousness, when it falls asleep? It does not cease to exist. It is somewhere, even if all the physical vehicles are asleep. And I imagine that in the end, it never goes beyond this. We know that one day another dawn will come and that we will once again be at the service of something greater than ourselves. And if we serve well, we are needed. And when we lie down every day or one day, definitively, we know the logic of life is that new dawns will come and that I may awaken with the same willingness to serve. It is to add value to the great cause of nature, to add value to humanity. In other words, I am a servant. That is why I am rarely dismissed.
Indeed, because when a human being chooses to stop growing, they are also choosing to die, right?
Exactly, completely, absolutely. Unconsciously, they have decided that life is not worth living when they refuse to grow. There is nothing more to
Do, right?
one who has the spirit of a learner. This spirit of a learner is something that nothing and no one can take away from them. When the disciple is ready, the master always appears. We have the spirit to learn. There is still much learning ahead of us. I believe in new dawns, as Carlos Drummond de Andrade used to say. Dawn is still the oldest sign of life on earth. Dawn and human life are intertwined in the same light. I believe in the dawn. I give myself the sleep of the just, and I know that at some moment there will be a new dawn, and I will keep moving forward.
It is a good hope for every day.
It is indeed really good.
21,000. And I had noted here that I wanted to ask for a recommendation of a book or perhaps a new Acropolis series that is specifically for my fellow travelers on this journey, those who are experiencing illness and perhaps questioning the meaning of all this. Is that what you would recommend to awaken and broaden the mind?
There is indeed a series on our new Acropolis YouTube channel called In Search of Wisdom. There was an Indian writer named Sri Ram from the last century who offered a precious idea. What's interesting about the series is that you can choose because each lecture is a chapter. You can select whichever chapter you want, and there's no need to follow a specific order. For example, today I am in the mood to listen to this particular topic. It is truly a treasure, a pity that it is not more widely known. And in the lectures, I will address it word by word, line by line. In other words, it's almost as if I am reading it aloud, adding my own commentary. It is truly worthwhile in the pursuit of wisdom, in fact, in the search for meaning, to make things sacred. You know that the sacred is what gives meaning. That is, every time we understand the meaning of an experience, it becomes sacred. It acquires the qualities of the sacred. Regarding books, I really like to always recommend a very simple and small one called The Art of Living by a Stoic philosopher named Epictetus, which has a modern version by a writer named Sharon Labelle. She updates it with contemporary vocabulary, but the content remains very faithful. It can also be read at random. You can pick up any chapter and learn from it. It's a short book, but it's one you read the same chapter 2 or 3 times because it's truly delightful. You savor the wisdom that is present there. From a man who possessed serenity in the face of life and all that is inherent to it, the only thing that outraged him was when life was profaned by things that are not human. That is, corruption, indignity, baseness, selfishness. These were, to him, sources of sadness. But everything that is inherent to life, he faced with joy, with a dignity that was truly exceptional. Dignity is one of the things for which we most need examples. Just as with indignities, to show that it exists, and that it is the nectar of life.
Indignity is a major struggle within palliative care to bring dignity to those who are often dying in absurd circumstances, with no one to care for them, no one to acknowledge their suffering, not even their pain. And now a 25-second timer has appeared here, so I really want to express my gratitude. I joke that I have a bucket list, those wishes to fulfill before I die, and you were one of them, so I am very happy to have shared all of this with us here at this moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hugs to you and all our companions on this journey. You can always count on me.
Thank you.